Hello. How's everybody out there? Okay, so welcome to tonight's stream. As I said, I'm Joshua Nielsen. I'm a APES teacher, and tonight I'll be talking about agricultural practices 3. This is from Unit 5. Let's get into this. Of course, before we begin, let me say thank you for joining us here at Fiveable. Please think about us at ThinkFiveable. We're on the Twitter, we're on Instagram, we're on YouTube. We're going to lots of more places pretty soon, from what I understand. So this is absolutely wonderful. All right. But once again, thank you for being here for us and for me. So here's what's on my agenda tonight. I'm going to be talking about these 3 things from Unit 5. Irrigation methods, pest control methods, and meat production methods. Hey, we just had some people pop in. Sweet. Oh yeah, so like I said, this is what I'm looking at going over tonight. Irrigation, pest control, and meat production methods. And it's all about feeding our planet and how we're doing just that. So let's start with a question. Here's my question right here. What percentage of water on Earth is actually fresh water? So think about it. I have a couple options up there. 70%, 25%, 10%, 2.5%. All right. Answer choice C. So actually, here's the thing. The amount of fresh water actually on our planet is really close to actually only 2.5% of all the water on our planet is actually fresh water. And even less than that, I think it's close to 1% is actually drinkable, usable. Basically, it's not locked up in glaciers and such. So there's just a small portion of what's actually on our planet that we can actually consider to be, drinkable, or even fresh water from there. All right, so let me show you this. There's irrigation methods. I want to show you this pie chart real quick. You can see that the majority of all water is used for irrigation. A very small amount is used for domestic purposes, like your washing machine, drinking, watering the yard. And the next largest portion is the industrial uses, which I thought was pretty neat. So, as I said right here, you can see it. 2.5% of the actual planet's water is considered to be fresh. Only 1% of all that is accessible. Like I said, it's not locked up in glaciers or in form of ice somewhere else. Legitimately, it is just liquid water for us to drink. Okay? Now, again, I said right here, 70% of all of this water, of this 2.5% of all the plant's water, 70% of it is actually used for irrigation. Again, for watering and basically taking care of our crops, for our food. That's an insane amount of water. Again, we only have a tiny little portion for us to be able to drink. 70% of that is for growing our food. They need an insane amount of water in order to do that. Okay, so as it says, irrigation is basically, what is irrigation? It's defined basically as controlling the amount of water that we use on our crops or even landscaping too. Oh, hey, we have more people in here. Welcome, people. Hi, Libby. All right, so how many of y'all, both of y'all, actually water your grass? How many, take the time to make sure your grass is all super green and everything else? Do you do that? Do you water your grass? Or are you in an area or like apartment complexes where the grounds are watered? Let's say that you're in an area that waters the grounds. The rain has been watering. Yeah, you guys had lots of rain over there. I had a little bit last night. I gotta tell you myself, I do not water my grass. I have tried to do what's called xeriscaping, so that I'm using very little water. I have 2 very large water containments, so that if I need water, I've got almost 600 gallons of which I can store. And that's what I use instead of using city water, which is very beneficial, and it's reduced my water bill a lot. As I say, if you looked, only 1% of all the water on the entire planet we're able to drink, and 70% of that we're using for our crops and our plants. Okay? So let's look at some irrigation methods. Advantages for irrigation. Can you think of an advantage for irrigating our crops? Is there a reason why we irrigate crops? All right, thank you. It says easier to prevent overwatering the crops. Yep. There is a possibility of overwatering. I will say that. It has happened. Actually, in this case, you can see this field has been flooded. So here are some of the advantages. When we prevent overwatering, we can stop the destruction of certain plants. And by irrigating, instead of just hoping that the rains will do it themselves, irrigation has increased crop yields. I'm sorry, I'm shaking my desk and now it makes it look like an earthquake. We've increased crop yields by directing water to the crops themselves. We've actually been irrigating crops for, if I remember correctly, it's well over 100. It's almost 2,000, maybe closer to 3,000 years. We've actually used a form of crop irrigation. It's not a new system, but there are newer forms of it. This is also secured against drought. Again, if you're just hoping that the rains will take care of your crops, it may not happen. Especially now, we're seeing that weather patterns are changing. My whole area has been under drought warnings up until a few years ago. We're major drought. So crop irrigation was a necessity. Now, some of the disadvantages. What are some of the problems with irrigation? Ooh, yes. Cost is definitely a thing. Definitely a cost thing. I don't remember if I have that on here. I didn't think about that. You're right. Cost. Certain methods cost a lot more. We'll talk about that. You guys ever accidentally leave a sprinkler on? You've totally waterlogged your grass. And I know when I accidentally did that, my dad was very not happy with me. Drip is one of the most conservative ways. We are going to be discussing that one. So possible waterlogging, that could be a problem. As you can see, this field right here is totally waterlogged. Most of that grass, if they're not able to handle excess water, is probably going to die. They're going to perish. Okay, and what happens is when you have too much water, you can cause root rot. That, despite the fact that there's oxygen in there. Oh, good. You have a dripper for your, I guess, for your landscaping. All right, so with root rot, there's a lack of oxygen that can get to the roots. It has to be able to technically breathe air. And if it can't do that, it will rot. And that's because the water is just totally inundated over that area. Another problem is what we call salination. Salination is, there are certain, you can have different types of salts and all that inside of the water. And as the water evaporates, the salts do not. And so the salts will stay right there. And too much of it will become toxic to plants. This was actually a method that some of the conquerors would use. They would salt the field so that the plants could not actually grow. No matter how much you watered it, the salt will stay there when the water evaporates. So salination is a major problem. So you have to find ways to combat that. All right. So let's get into some of our irrigation methods. All right. Just want to make sure. Okay. So this method right here is probably one of the older ones. Okay. It's known as furrow. Those furrows, as you can see on the screen, in between the plants, you see little ditches in there. So that is a furrow. All right. So the plants are grown between the trenches, and the trenches are going to be filled up with water so that the water can get to the plants on either side. You'll see that the plants are up on a hill, so they don't get too terribly waterlogged right there. All right, so here's one of the benefits. I know in FRQs they're always talking about what are the pros and cons or advantages, disadvantages. So here's one of the advantages. It's very inexpensive. All you have to do is dig a trench. Okay, so it takes very little time. You can plow right through there perfectly easily fine. One of the problems is the amount of water that is lost. So about a third of all the water you're going to use is going to be lost due to either evaporation or runoff. Again, if you have too much water in there, it can just carry off through the soil if you don't have some way to contain it. And if you do contain it, that's great. But if it doesn't soak into the soil rapidly enough, it will evaporate. So again, we have a third of all that water lost for evaporation. And then again, of course, that can cause salination if there's actual salts in there. Okay. And there are salts in native waters and such. So you have to be careful with that. But again, really, really cheap and expensive. Okay, it's probably, again, one of the oldest ones that have ever been used. And again, like I said, possible waterlogging and salination here is a difficult thing to combat and come back from. If I am talking too fast, or if I'm annoying you too much, please tell me something. Hey, slow down. Hey, speed up. Whatever it is. Always try to be helpful for my audiences. Okay, so take a guess as to what irrigation method we're looking at here. That's right. Thank you, Ethan. It is a flood. Those right there, those happen to be rice paddies. They are very good with an insane amount of water. So here is the flood method. Again, the field is flooded and then the water is allowed to soak into the soil. So here's the thing. We don't have to worry about plowing in furrows or anything like that. We can just allow water to flood that entire area. So once again, insanely inexpensive. Again, between this one and the furrow, you're not spending a lot of money. In fact, you're probably spending less money on this because you don't have to worry about spending labor on making little tiny ditches. But of course, there's always some negatives. We're still losing a lot of water to evaporation or runoff. If you don't remember from the soils portion of our units earlier, if the soil is too dry, it can't actually absorb water fast enough. And so you're going to actually have a lot of runoff. And so that's one of the problems right here is if those soils are too dry, when you waterlog that whole field, then you're going to have a lot of runoff, and that will carry off a lot of your soils. Another, again, negative right here is the possibility of waterlogging, possibility of salination. That's always that right there. Okay. Now, this is one I thought was the neatest when I was a kid. And seeing these really large sprinklers. I grew up next to farmlands, and seeing these huge sprinklers out there, I thought, as a little 5-year-old kid, I thought that was the neatest thing in the world right there. All right. At least when I was 5, it was. All right. So looking at this is a spray system. This is very similar to like what you have at your house for, a sprinkler. Okay. It was legitimately a sprinkler system. Now, here's one of the negatives. I'm going to start off the negative here. It costs a lot more money. You have to buy or rent that equipment. Then it has to be transported to the fields. Some of them are stationary. Others you'll have to, like these ones are on wheels, you'll have to move them around every so often. So you're going to have somebody out there to watch that. But less than 25% of that water is going to be lost to evaporation. This is a much more efficient system than either of the other two. We're losing less than 25%. I know the flood said we're losing about 20%, but it could be a little higher. This one is designed so that you're going to get water specifically in certain areas, and you don't have to take care of the entire area. So if only a patch needs water, we can just water that patch. We don't have to water everything. Is there a possibility of waterlogging on this? What do you think? Could you have waterlogging issues with a sprinkler system? Sure, of course you can have waterlogging issues. It's going to be less apparent with this one unless one of the sprinkler heads is broken. But usually if that happens, then your waterlogging issue is going to be in a very localized area. It won't be the entire region there, okay? All right, so the last irrigation method I want to talk about tonight is the drip, all right? People happen to have drip irrigation. I know in my city that I live in, because we are prone to droughts, we do have a drip irrigation system for most of the trees that are lining our streets and all that. All it is a perforated hose. You can get a little bit more modified and you have like a special nozzle on it, but literally it's just a couple of drips here and there so that you are just watering a very specific area, like a specific plant. Problem with this, insanely expensive, right? The more, the larger the area, the more it's going to cost, obviously. But the benefits are rather great. You're going to lose less than 5% of all that water. And it is, of course, now the most efficient one of our irrigation methods. But again, the problem, everything's a balancing act. It's the most efficient, but it is the most expensive. So again, like everything else in my APES class, I tell my students, you have to weigh the good with the bad. What are you willing to give up for what you're going to get out of it? I know our nursery here in town uses that drip irrigation method, and so that they actually have a computer controlled, so that there's sensors. They can figure out which plants have the driest soil, so they can add a little bit more water to that one specifically. That right there is really expensive, but they get great results because of it. Okay. Now, who else said that they have drip? Does anybody say? Oh, Dakota, you say you have a dripper. Okay. Do you guys use the dripper for the bushes or trees? What do you use it? If I may ask. Mom's garden. That's a good thing to have. Mom's garden right there. Excellent. Cool. And again, it saves a lot of money on water. So that, again, you're not wasting a lot of the city water. You're not using a lot of money for that. The more money is, again, going to be spent on the equipment right there. Okay. Okay, so here's some of the things I want to talk about when it comes to irrigation. This is one of the major problems that we're seeing, is where you get the water from. This right here is the Ogallala Aquifer. Again, aquifers are basically underground storage containers for water. Most of them have a semi-permeable top so that the water percolates down through. It gets cleansed and everything else as it goes through the soil into this area that will hold the water. So the Ogallala Aquifer is one of the largest. I know it's definitely the largest here in the U.S., and it is used, as you can see, that whole red outline is the outline of the aquifer itself. And so, again, it's kind of that tragedy of the commons area thing. Nobody technically owns it because it spans numerous states. So if one state starts draining more water out of it, then other states are going to have less of it. And you can see that it is a availability issue right here. Some places are taking a lot more. And what we've seen over time is, even over the past couple of decades, it has dropped dramatically because the recharge for it, I know for parts of the Ogallala, it is weeks, if not months, in order to recharge a portion of the water that, again, it has to filter through. So we're taking more out than we're actually putting in, via rain and such. So this is one of the problems with irrigation. I've also seen reports that, farmers in other cities, not just farmers, but again, 70% of all the fresh water that we have available is for irrigation, or is used for irrigation. A large portion of the Colorado River is just being drained in order for our water needs. And in some places, and sometimes it doesn't even reach the ocean. It just falls short of it. And again, you have to imagine a lot of that's going to be used for crops. And then the next part would be industrial, and then finally for our own personal use. Okay. All right, so let's talk about our next part here. If a chemical pesticide is sprayed upon a rose bush, how could this affect the local water table? This is kind of like an FRQ question type thing. So you don't have to get too terribly in depth, but just think about it. Type a quick little answer into the chat window over there. If I'm spraying some pesticide on a rose bush, how could that possibly affect the water table? Take a minute, think about it. Contamination. All right, thank you. Runoff can leak the chemicals into local water supplies. Wonderful. Possible biomagnification. My little screen was covering there. Excellent. Okay, thank you. Now, I will say this on FRQs. Never just say that it can cause pollution. They will not accept anything that, as they say, loosey-goosey. So nail down the pollutant that they use, okay? Y'all were able to kind of curtail that, but I will say this. You just make sure, don't just say it causes pollution. You have to nail down the type. So yeah, it can actually pollute the local waterways because of runoff if you use too much of it, or if you use it right before it rains, it can soak down into the soils. Excellent. Awesome. I think I'm going a little too fast tonight. Dadgummit. I'm going to have to slow down. All right. So pest control methods. This is not, we're not talking about integrated pest control. We're just talking about all the asides. pesticides and other forms of stuff like that. Okay, so any type of chemical that's used to kill something or deter the growth of unwanted organisms, that is what we're going to be talking about here. All these different asides. So, have you used any of those at your house, apartment, school? Have you used any type of chemical, or has any type of chemical been used in order to deter an organism? If so, what type is it? I got one person says no. Okay. Oh, you weed by hand? More labor intensive. Again, that's that whole balancing thing. Less chemicals, but more labor intensive. Okay. I will say this, that we have had a rodent problem because I live near a river and a very large park, and so critters like to come up towards us. We even had a possum last year. That was kind of scary to stare down a possum. But for some of the other less desirable creatures, we have had to use different types of bait and poison. I don't like to use them, and I'll tell you about the reason why here in just a few slides. But we have used it, and we have sprayed weed killer. Now, I will tell you this. When I was in college, I have a biology bachelor's. I asked my botany teacher, what is the difference between a weed and, like, say, a normal plant? And, oh, yeah, mothballs. Mothballs are a really good one. Thank you. This is her legitimate answer. Now, again, she is a college professor. She said the difference between a weed and a normal plant is a weed is a plant that you don't want. I said, so basically, if I don't want a rose bush in my yard, she goes, yes, it's now considered a weed. I didn't realize that the definition was just so black and white. It's something that you don't want growing in your yard. I tell my students that every year. It's pretty cool. All right, so let's talk about all the different asides, shall we? And I hadn't even thought about the mothballs. Excellent. Yeah, I keep those in my closet. So these are the different asides and basically what they do. And thankfully, because of our use of Latin and other forms of stuff like that, it's really not as difficult to remember what they are. Insecticides kill insects. Fungicides kill fungus. Rodenticides kill rodents, rats, mice, stuff like that, gophers. We had a gopher problem when I used to live in Canada. And then, of course, herbicides will kill plants. There is another one that is just called a pesticide, and it is usually combinations of different things that you can spray on there for just a large variety of pests. Okay. So, like you said there, Dakota, the mothball would actually be considered an insecticide. It doesn't actually have to kill things, but it could deter, basically kind of force them to go somewhere else. Mothballs also work on a lot of different rodents. They don't like the smell. All right. So, let's talk about good things and bad things. One of the bad things about using pesticides or any type of aside is that you can target, or basically you can affect non-target species. Maybe you were trying to take care of the moth problem, but there's other organisms that are affected by this that you were not intending to. So can you please give me a couple of different examples of non-target species that have been affected by the different uses of any of these asides? Yeah, I keep using the suffix on there, aside. An example of a non-target species. And there's plenty of them, so go for it. Things that have been affected, but not on purpose. Quite a few birds, yes. There's an example I'll be talking about here in a few moments. The bird close to my heart. Bees. A lot of bee deaths are because you are not you specifically, but humans have placed different types of insecticides and herbicides onto plants, and it has gotten into their pollen, it's gotten onto the bees, and it could be detrimental to them. So I happen to love honey. I eat peanut butter and honey all the time. It's one of my favorite food groups. I even spent an entire year at college eating nothing but peanut butter and honey for lunch. That's how much I love honey. So the detriment of the bee killing is just, again, it's rather personal to me. And yes, other birds can be affected as well. Again, when I've used the uh, rodenticide to kill some of the rats and all that, if they're not, basically what will happen is if they, leave the house and all that and go off and die, another bird like an owl can eat them, and now they are gaining that poison too. So there's lots of signs around town and other areas that say, hey, please don't use rat poisons, because it is definitely affecting the ability of birds, specifically owls and other birds of prey. It's affecting their ability to live. So there's a huge movement to just get rid of all those poisons and use either live traps or snap traps and all that. And another example, fish. This right here is the rainbow trout. And some of the runoff of the chemicals has gone into the water, and it has affected the rainbow trout as they swim upstream to spawn and all that. They are having difficulties, with spawning. There has been problems with their gills. There's gill destruction. Some of the runoff of those chemicals destroy their food source. So there's lots of different things that are happening just to that rainbow trout. And it's not because we were trying to kill them. We were trying to kill something else. This is just one of those side effects. Again, it's that, that's that balancing thing. What are you willing to give up in order to have what you're going for here? Okay. Sorry about that. My computer's still in there. Okay, so here's one of the things we definitely want to talk about because of pest control methods is bioaccumulation. Okay. What happens is over time, the poison is building up within the organism's system. So they're getting, as they eat, they get a little bit more, and as they grow, they're still eating, so they're getting more and more of this poison within them. That's what it means to be for bioaccumulation. My students always have a problem with that. And what it usually leads to is biomagnification. So this chart right here that I put together myself with my computer wizardry skills is showing biomagnification. So let's say that, obviously that lovely little caterpillar, tiny little guy, just eats a little bit of poison, not enough to kill it. Cool. But then the bird. Now, is a bird going to eat one caterpillar? Yes or no? Use your favorite. Okay, I was going to say use your emojis, but yeah, the bird can't just live on one caterpillar alone. So it has to eat lots of caterpillars. So now you notice that on the graph, there is more poison within, or in this case, I said toxin, but there's more of that within the bird. Now, don't ask me how a snake is going to eat a bird. Let's just pretend that this is going to happen. Maybe it's a ground bird. Okay, obviously there's not going to be any flying snakes. But now that the bird has more toxin in them, the snake can't just live on one bird. Remember, we had talked about, one of my first streams was talking about the energy pyramid, 10% rule. You're going to have to eat a lot more of that organism. So you can see that it's building almost exponentially with the amount of food that they're eating up until you get to the eagle. Now, the reason why I put on the bald eagle here is one very important pest control that was used and has been banned since the 1970s here in the U.S. Do you know what that chemical is? It was highly valued. It was basically, it could kill dang near any pest that we put it on, mostly for plants and all that. It was insecticide. That's right, Dakota, DDT. Please do not ask me what DDT stands for, because I don't remember. But what was happening is the bald eagle, the symbol of the United States, the shells of the bald eagle, they were becoming too thin, and the chicks were actually dying before they actually could hatch because of the thin shells. And it was all led back to the use of DDT. Again, was an absolutely wonderful chemical for what it could do, but because of all the side effects, all the non-target species that it was affecting, it was banned in the U.S. And I believe it's since the 1970s. It's not been banned everywhere, however. There's still plenty of places that still use it. But again, it's that balancing act right there. Okay? Oh, let's talk about soybeans. A lot of soybeans are genetically modified. They're GMO'd. Is GMO a good thing or a bad thing? Use an emoji. Okay, super happy. Okay, you're right. It does depend. It's in between. You're right. So certain things could be good, certain things could be bad. So let's talk about what I have on the screen right here. Basically, what we're doing is the original GMO and genetic modification was through artificial breeding. So, we want a specific trait that was in our corn. So we kept breeding that corn with other corn that had that trait in order to develop corn that specifically only has this trait. But now what we're able to do is we can take sections of DNA, genes from one organism, and splice them into another organism, giving that second organism, a new power, a new trait. Okay. And what we've done is we've increased resistance to some of the pesticides we've used. We've increased resistance to certain diseases. We've made productivity increase. The reason why I have soybeans on here is Monsanto has developed a strain of soybean that is resistant to their Roundup. So their Roundup is a pesticide, an herbicide that can kill lots of different types of species of plant that is not beneficial for growing. And so this soybean is specifically designed to totally withstand, have total resistance to that Roundup. And that Roundup is able to kill everything else. So again, that's why I have it on. So you're right. It can be good or could be bad depending on what we're looking at. All right. One of the most famous examples of genetic modification is taking a tiny little gene from a jellyfish and actually putting it in a little neon tetra so that under a black light, they can glow. No other reason. They just want fish that can glow in the dark, technically. We do use that gene, though, in one of the AP biology labs to make the bacteria glow. And that's to help make sure that transformation is occurred. But I'm not going to get into that. That's for the AP biology teachers, which I'm only at one point in time of the day. Okay, so enough of me going blah, blah, blah. So look at this right here. Notice what's happening. The first generation of the use of this pesticide. So beforehand, whole bunch of white and one of the red. These are all the same species. Let me make sure you understand that. They're all the same species right here, technically. And so after the use of this pesticide application, most of the white ones are gone. All we're left with is this red one. Why is that red one still there? Why did it kill most of the white ones and not the red one? It's not technically dependent on their color. We're just using the color to show something else. What are we showing here with the loss of the majority of the whites and the red not being affected? I have to go back to your biology class to think about this one. Exactly. Thank you, Ethan. The red beetle has some sort of genetic resistance to the use of that pesticide. It just so happened that it didn't kill all of the white beetles. And so if you look later on the next generations, there's a lot more of the red beetles, so fewer white ones, until eventually all you're going to have are these red beetles. Okay, so this natural resistance right here is occurring through, again, natural selection. If you happen to have the right traits for that environment, you tend to survive in order to pass on your genetic information. This is the reason why I tell my students I never use that hand sanitizer stuff. It kills 99.9% of all the germs. There's that small portion that can't be killed. So we're killing off everything that can be killed, and we're just allowing the furtherment of that small portion that cannot be killed. And they're going to pass that genetic resistance on to the next generation. The poisons that we used to use for cockroaches when I was a kid growing up in Houston, that poison is not even effective anymore because they killed off the majority of the cockroaches, but there's always that random genetic mutations that can happen. And when it did, it gave some of those cockroaches a resistance. And so now we have to use stronger poisons. We have to use stronger insecticides, rodenticides, herbicides, all of those, because we are going through, it's no longer a natural selection. This is going to be an artificial selection. We are furthering the development of this resistance. So in order to kill the rat, we have to make a bigger and stronger rat trap. Okay, so we're forcing that to happen by using these. So there's other more natural methods that could have that we can use. All right, so let's talk about my last portion tonight. Again, I hope I'm not going too fast for you. So as of right now, this is very cruel and mean because I have not eaten my dinner yet. So seeing both of those is not helping. So why is a fast food hamburger cheaper than making your own salad? Why is going to, insert your favorite fast food restaurant? Why is it cheaper to get that fast food burger than it is to just make your own? Hey, Ethan, you're right. Government subsidized beef. They do subsidize the crops and everything else. Don't get me wrong, but there's more subsidies on beef, making it cheaper to buy that. Now, if you ever go to the grocery store with your parents, or if you ever decide you want to do it for yourself and look at the price of meat, it's still very expensive. Very expensive. So let's talk a little bit about why that is. Meat itself can take 20 times more space than crops for the same amount of calories. So again, on here, on the little chart right there, in order to grow 100 grams of proteins, it takes 185 square meters per year to grow 100 grams of protein of lamb, 164 of beef. You just want cheese? Great. We'll still have to have cows. Eggs, 5.7. 400 grams of protein. That's not a lot of eggs, and yet you need 5.7 square meters of space per year to grow your eggs. And then look at tofu. We know tofu is made from soy and all that. Very little. It's almost, again, we're looking at that food energy pyramid, except for now this one's upside down. This one's reversed. The plants take literally the least amount in order to grow the most amount of protein. So we're using a lot of space in order to grow our meat. And it's not just space. It's water, it's energy, and everything else. So it's insanely expensive to make all that happen. So that's why the government is helping to subsidize that cost so that, the term red-blooded Americans, it's, red meat-eating Americans, really. All right, so some of these images are not the happiest. I try to find ones that didn't offend too many people. But this right here is known as the CAFOs, a concentrated animal feeding operation. I happen to live very close to one. It's actually only about 30 miles from here. And on a warm summer day, you can smell them. One of the benefits of a CAFOs, doesn't take a lot of space. All right. It's in the name. It's concentrated. So there's a whole bunch of cows, let's say 200-300 cattle, in something the size of like your school building. And that is their entire home. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little less space or a number of cattle, but that's still a lot. So again, it takes less space, which is great because we just saw on the last slide, it takes a lot of space to grow this meat. They are fed by food pellets. So these little cattle right down there, you can see it's on the ground next to them. They're not eating hay. You've seen videos, ranches and all that, the cattle eating hay. They're not eating hay. They're eating food pellets. And this is because it's much easier to distribute. It's easier to transport and to get to the cattle. It's much easier. It's still basically the same amount of nutrients, but in pellet form. Now, one of the problems here is disease transmission. Right now, everyone is very concerned about the coronavirus. Okay. Think of your school like a CAFOs. If one person is sick, what's likely to happen to the rest of your class? One person decides to cough in a class of 24 people. Yeah, the chance is greatly increased when there's more people, or in this case, cattle, in a closed area. So there's the disease transmission alone. Usually what will happen is one gets sick, they all have to get inoculated. So what they'll do is they are going to be using a lot of antibiotics, which could be good or bad. They will treat the cattle, almost anything really, cattle, it's going to be birds, pigs, whatever, with antibiotics, whether they need them or not. This is their initial, their shots when they're younger. It's to protect them because of the possibility of this disease transmission. A lot of them are also given hormones in order to grow bigger, grow faster, different densities of meat. Have you guys ever watched Food Inc.? It's difficult to find nowadays online, but Food Inc. actually talks about this. Why grow a chicken to full size in 90 days when you can do it in 50 days? Oh, good. AP Hugo, good. Yeah, I don't usually watch it in my class anymore because Human Geography's been watching it a lot, and so I don't want them to have to watch it twice. But yeah, it makes sense. Why wait 3 months if I can do something in 2 months? And so that's why those hormones are given. But now those hormones, those antibiotics, they can, kind of like with bioaccumulation and biomagnification, they can still persist in that meat. And now you are taking those in for yourself too. So that's why I have it as a positive and negative on there. Another large negative is the amount of organic waste, basically poo, that's produced by these. Normally, if they're out in the field, it's easy enough, and they just poop whatever. But now this is super concentrated, and if it's not taken care of properly, it can pollute the groundwater. Anytime there's a flood near a pig farm, everybody's concerned by the amount of fecal matter that can get into lakes and rivers that people get their drinking water from. So you actually have to have poo lagoons, a very large, pond of poo in order to take care of all the waste. There was a whole TV show called Dirty Jobs years ago. Actually, he went to a poo lagoon and he had to kind of clean it. And of course, it's crowded. Animals, a lot of animals do have feelings. We've seen that happen. So depression can happen and such like that because of overcrowding. Okay. So again, it's not just with cattle. It's also with pigs, chickens, and so forth. Okay. So let's talk about chickens and these pigs. What's different about these images compared to this one? What's different here? If you'll notice in these pictures, you can't tell if they're happy or sad, but there's a lot more space. This is what we call free range. And for some reason, that didn't pop up one at a time. My bad. I gave you all the information without going through it. So free range. Now, here's the problems. It does take more. So you cannot have as many animals, but there's a lot more space involved. So when we have more space, there's hopefully a possibility of less of the disease transmission. We consider it more of a natural setting. So again, animals have feelings and all that. They're not overly crowded. There's less depression and other things like that. And they're not feeding on pellets. They're feeding on grasses. Hopefully those pigs are looking for truffles, which are types of mushrooms. It's more sustainable. We're not having to grow as much food, turn it into pellets. This is, again, in open fields. Now, the problem is if you don't move them around, like I know cattle, they'll just keep eating and eating and eating. Same with pigs. So you have to move them around from area to area so that they do not overgraze. And because of overgrazing, you can have desertification. That grass may not grow back ever again. It's just that area is totally destroyed. If it's not the grass is destroyed, you possibly have destroyed the soils by compaction. I know CAFOs, you will have soil compaction because of it, and it's also very dirty and muddy. This is a lot cleaner. Now, because of all these, it is a much more expensive meat. If you ever see free range, what they'll determine as organic, it is more expensive now. And it's because they cannot grow. I keep saying the word grow. They cannot have as many animals in that same space. They have to have a lot more space. So it does get more expensive. But again, it's that balancing act thing. So what are some ways that we, as humans, can cut down on the amount of meat that we eat so that we are not contributing to this problem, the amount of area that is required? We can have meatless Mondays. This was actually set up, I want to say almost 20 years ago. Meatless Mondays. How many of y'all ever heard of Meatless Mondays? A whole bunch of APES teachers talk about it on our Facebook pages. Meatless Monday. Have you ever done it? Have you ever tried to go, legitimately, we're going to go cold turkey here. I've tried in the past, but unfortunately, I'm not the world's best APES teacher. I still like meat. I like hamburgers, steak. I just had pork chops 2 days ago. I love them. All right, so what happens when we eat less meat? Let's think about this way. What happens to, I know this is a very broad and open-ended question here, but what can happen when we eat less meat? I'll give you the first hint here, all right? There's less carbon dioxide. There's less animals doing less respiration. There's less fuel being used, so there's less combustion in the air because we're not having to transport as many organisms. So there's legitimately less actual carbon dioxide in the air. What's another thing that happens because of eating less meat? I tell my students, talk amongst yourselves, converse. CH4. Thank you for using that. For those of you that don't know CH4, it's methane, less methane gas. There's a, hey, I'm not sure if you actually have access to my PowerPoint here, my slideshow, but yeah, there's less methane gas. In my classroom, it's called poo gas. A lot of farts are methane. Animals do a lot of farting because they're eating a lot of grass. All right, so that's a natural thing. Pigs way more than most other animals for some reason. Less NO2 or N2O, which is a form of nitrogen that goes into the atmosphere, okay, and into our soils. There's a reduction in antibiotics. And I know there's a lot of people that they cannot have antibiotics because they are allergic to them. So by putting it into the meats, they can't actually eat those types of meats because it's persistent and they can get it, so they can actually get sick from eating it. So by eating less meats, we have less antibiotics. We have less antibiotic resistance. So a lot of the organisms that are trying to kill us are not as resistant to our methods anymore. We have improved topsoil. We're not overgrazing. We're not having compaction because of constantly walking over the same areas. There's like keep going on there. And we have more available land. We can have like more parks. We can use that land instead of growing cattle. We can actually get more of the food that we eat. Again, it's not just when cattle don't just take up the area. You have to have room for the cattle or the pigs or the chickens or the lambs. Then you also have to have farmland in order to grow the crops that they eat. Even though we feed them in pellets, you still have to grow the food. So it's not just the amount of area that we use to, harvest our cattle. We have to get their food too. That's why it's getting such an insane amount of space right there. Alrighty, so like I said, I've never been able to do Meatless Mondays, although when I do go to the AP reading in Cincinnati, I do try to go meatless as much as possible. I got food poisoning one year. That's not because of them, but I just felt better eating a whole bunch of vegetables and salads. I felt a lot better. Anyway, so before I let you guys go, I do want to ask you, do you have any questions for me? Anything I didn't cover that you want me to talk about tonight from these topics? I talked about irrigation methods. I talked about pest control methods. And then last but not least, meat production methods. Is there a question that I can help answer for you? as a portion of this review. As with always, I like to end telling you thank you for being here tonight. I hope I've been helpful. I hope that this has been beneficial for you. I know you've given up an hour of your time to be here, and I thank you for that. Always think about us at Think5able. We're on Twitter. We are tweeting about ourselves all the time. We're talking ourselves on Instagram, and we're going to be doing more stuff with YouTube in the near future. We've changed our setup a little bit, if you guys haven't found out. We're making lots of changes. So, again, think about us when you're looking for reviews, when you're just needing that little concept to help yourself out. You'll notice that all of our stuff is free now. You can go see any of the previous streams, any of the review guides, all that stuff. It's all available to everybody now. So use it. It's there. It's free. Why not use it? Okay? All right. So I shall bid you adieu. Thank you for being here with me tonight. I'm going to go get some dinner. And I hope you guys have a great, wonderful night. I'll see you next time. I won't be here next week, but, please come to our sessions. All of our streamers are really good. That's why we have them. Thank you very much for being here tonight, y'all, and take care. Bye-bye. See you later.